Good afternoon, everybody. It's really exciting to be here at Gov 2.0. I think Todd Park had mentioned I am somebody from the startup community, from the web and internet technology community, and not somebody that had been involved in government or civic technology before. And as we get started, what I wanted to explain is the reason I'm here and working with Expert Labs and doing the work that I'm doing is not merely because I would like to help my country or help my society, but also because these are the most interesting technological challenges that we can engage with. And so that being said, what I'm here to talk about today specifically is participation. And this idea of participation has a lot of factors to it, but it touches on a lot of the concepts that have been discussed by everybody that's talked today. Perhaps a great place to start is with defining what Expert Labs is. So I'm the director of Expert Labs. We're an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, all those good things. And our mission is to help policymakers make better decisions by letting them crowdsource or reach out to social networks to help get insights into the policy decisions that they're making. And this has been a very, very exciting mission to have. We're about 6 months in, and we've already seen some success. As an institution, we are part of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. A lot of you are familiar with AAAS. They're the folks that publish the journal Science. The greatest thing about being part of this institution is that we are allowed to conduct our work in technology as if it were an experiment. And so we can publish our learnings and our findings and share them with the world. And this is really the first step towards us trying to enable participation, is in saying we are going to give of ourselves our ideas and our findings and hope that you respond to them. And what I want to illustrate in participation is that we've had so many examples today of talking about how if we're going to preserve our heritage, we need to have the production values that people are used to seeing in other forms of media, as Jeff had said. And there's a really interesting idea there that participation requires going culturally to where people are. Or what Virginia had said about NIH having to have the message be delivered to teens where they are. Right? So we're talking about the precepts that enable participation and what we have to do culturally to do that. And I think a great starting point is to look at the ideas that we have people participate in need to be important. Right? And these are clear examples. So as Mary just showed us, there is a simple and important message to improving acquisitions. Right? It's easy to draw a community of interested people who think that there's improvements to be made and that acquisitions is an area that's important for us to advance in. But the limit here is that, well, only so many people know what the word acquisitions means. If you look at somebody like Todd Park or me that wasn't in government until relatively recently, we might not have known this terminology and what it meant. And also, there's a ceiling to the number of people that can get involved in this because not everybody has something constructive to add. So in addition to having ideas that are important, if we really want to drive broad participation, we also have to be talking about ideas that are accessible. And the best examples we can think of this come from the personal web, not just in the government or the civic sector, but in how we use social media and the social web in our everyday lives. I'll show you one example from my own life, which was that a couple months ago, I had a phone that broke, so I asked my social network to tell me what kind of new phone I should get. Right? And this is a very straightforward question saying, my friends are geeks, they'll probably recommend Apple or Google, but I don't have the time to do the research myself. Let me see what their insights are going to be. And I was able to gather their responses using a platform I'll talk about in a minute called Think Tank. And in my case, I was very fortunate. I got a lot of responses, right? Dozens and dozens of them, because I have a social network of people that care a lot about things like gadgets. And the interesting thing was not that I got a lot of responses. It's that somebody I don't know who Rooney is, sent me a link to information about how much radiation smartphones put out. And that link led to an article that not only told me about cell phone radiation, but concludes with a list of the 10 handsets that put out the least amount of radiation. So we've talked a lot about crowdsourcing or about encouraging participation, but I also want to highlight this element of serendipity. The reason we have to have accessible questions and accessible prompts for people to participate in is because it leaves us open to answers to questions we didn't even know we were asking. So instead of the expected result set of a chart of responses that looks like, a large part Apple, a little part Google, we get insights into things that can affect our lives, right? So there's a lot here to be said for the power of having one's own think tank. And it's something that we almost have started to take for granted, even though it's a relatively recent development. The ability to tap into a social network of thousands of people is incredible power. But if you had that power, how would you use it? In our case, at Expert Labs, we have supported the creation of an open source platform called Think Tank. And it's appropriately named, right? It communicates exactly what its purpose is to say you can see your network of connections on all these different networks as your own personal think tank that you can tap into. And that's a really powerful idea. The great thing is, in just a couple months, we've had enormous success. This platform is led by a woman named Gina Trapani, who many of you will know as the founder of the blog Lifehacker and Smarterware. She's an established author and one of the most popular bloggers and podcasters on the web. She's been able to get hundreds of people interested in contributing to this platform, a core of several dozen developers that are creating it, and they've been able to make a completely free and open platform that anyone can use, not just government agencies, not just a private industry, but individuals. Anybody can use this tool if they have the technological skills and tap into the expertise of their networks. We are called Expert Labs, and the premise here is that we know the experts are out there. We know there is knowledge out there waiting to be tapped into. But if you have this kind of power that we haven't had before to quickly and easily tap into expertise, where's the place you would want to put it to use the most? Well, that was the question we asked ourselves, and the starting point was pretty clear. You want to go to the top, right? We have had so much conversation about the open government initiatives that were led by the White House and have gone across every agency in the government. And the interesting thing about this is we have talked about them so much as an agency is doing this, the White House is doing this, but what these are is platforms for all of us as an independent nonprofit, in our case, as individual citizens in all of our cases, to be able to participate and take ownership of these open government initiatives. What I mean is, we're not asking for permission to say, will you let us amplify your efforts? We can say, we found a conversation that we think is important, and we're going to tap into our own networks to amplify that message and get people involved and engaged. And that's exactly what we've begun to do. The first real experiment we've done at Expert Labs is embracing what the White House has called the Grand Challenges Initiative. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is to identify the grand scientific and technological challenges that face our country. One, to get people in those communities of science and technology focused on solving those problems. But two, to get the side benefits, the unexpected serendipitous benefits of solving those grand challenges. And the model for this couldn't be clearer. We know that people are inspired by grand challenges like the idea of going to the moon. And so if you ask the question of what challenge is as big as going to the moon, you capture people's attention, you capture people's imaginations, and you can start to inspire a lot of different ideas that can lead to, unconventional or unexpected innovation. And so the great thing about a question like that is it combines the importance of many of our gov efforts that happen on .gov sites with the accessibility of the questions we ask each other on social networks, right? And that combination of being both important and accessible is what leads us to getting really, really large numbers of people to participate in a crowdsourcing initiative. So the White House actually followed through on this. They asked this question to their network on Twitter of what should be on the nation's to-do list for science and technology. They asked this question on Facebook. And these were a revolution in the way that they had done outreach, because the Grand Challenges Initiative started as a traditional outreach campaign where they were simply asking people to email in responses during a 4-month window by promoting it on the whitehouse.gov site, which is, of course, an important first step. But there's a lot of people that aren't visiting whitehouse.gov regularly. And so by going to these other networks, whether it was Twitter or Facebook or even simple email, you're able to get a large number of people participating. And this is important because we have to think of social networks in a different way. This isn't simply about which network is the biggest today. It's saying there's a holistic view of all of these networks together that lets us actually encourage participation and reach a larger audience and also be much more representative of the American public that we're trying to connect to. And so we combine all the pieces of that puzzle together to have one big network of networks. And that's what the word internet means, network of networks, right? So then we come back to this question of how do we pose this to a large community with an important challenge, and how do we collect their responses? And what kind of responses are we going to get? In this case, we will get you know, a scriptwriter in LA talking about people being able to generate their own electricity. We're talking about a programmer at Microsoft in Washington speaking about energy independence. We have you know, a grad student in Colorado talking about algal hydrogen production. This is a guy who draws webcomics talking about space colonies. A woman in the hills of North Carolina who's talking about devices to detect head trauma. Or a high school student who's saying he'd like electronic textbooks. And this is a really, really powerful change, an inspiring change in what we can do. Of course, you'll get some things that are off topic. Like you have the actor John Cusack telling the White House to look into hot tub-based time travel. And that's okay, right? You're going to have some things that are off topic. That's all right as long as you get the important ideas collected. And that is what happened. By combining the ideas that were important and accessible, we were able to get over 2,000 responses through these different social networks collected by Think Tank, in addition to almost 700 collected by email. And that's 1 or 2 orders of magnitude more participation than we got before we had gone to where people lived and connected to them in the ways that they wanted to be spoken to. So this is the power of what having your own think tank can do. This is frankly our mission at Expert Labs. And if this kind of potential and power seems valuable to you, I hope you'll join us. You can visit us at expertlabs.org. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Expert Labs, but you can participate as an individual, as an organization, and as a citizen, and really show the potential of participation that's truly inclusive. Thank you very much for your time.